Vaughn Tinsley, Stepfatherz, here again. Today we're with Mr. Miguel Vargas, and we're talking about fatherhood. Obviously, we get really in depth with fatherhood. We talk about first-time fathers, and mentor, carrying the role of fatherhood. But one of the things we don't talk about too much is stepfathers. How stepfathers play a major role in children's lives. And being a former stepfather, having a son, having a stepson, nothing really changes. And we're going to hear from Miguel Vargas firsthand on what it's been like in being a stepfather and also having his own biological child as well. Mr. Vargas, how you doing, sir?
Doing good, sir. How you doing today?
All right, good to see you, man. So why don't we start off just by stating your name, what you're doing with your life, what your journey's been like as a stepfather as well as biological father. Just talk about how it is, man.
Okay. My name is Miguel Vargas. The journey for me as being first as a stepfather began about 6 years ago when I met my soon-to-be wife. She was in the process of separation from her husband at the time, and I met she's not, I don't even classify as my stepdaughter. It's my daughter Zadie, and hit it off well from that point on. And how stuff has worked out since then in the past 6 years or so, and having our own our own child together, Angie, who's now 4 going on 5, and so even with that whole process, how God's worked out things for me, and placed me in positions of leadership in my church, and helped to show me how to work and function as a stepfather. My pastor is his oldest child is not his biological child, but raised that child from birth, and so. Though I didn't raise Zadie from birth, I played a more prominent role as her dad than her real dad did.
Wow.
And not to take it from him, because that's always going to be her dad.
Sure.
But it's also a matter of him understanding that, I helped to, raise her and instill certain values in her life, because there's certain things I want her to understand about herself and who God's called her to be. Yeah. And I know a lot of guys get it twisted when it comes to stepchildren. They think they're marrying the woman and not the kids, but you marry the family. You know what I mean?
Right, that's significant.
Yeah, you come into it and you marry the wife and you're marrying the daughter. At my wedding day, I actually proposed to my daughter and asked her to be my daughter.
Wow.
And it was just to make it more significant, because to have her understand, to play a role, that we're a family. It's not myself, my wife, and my daughter, and you. It's all 4 of us. And that's something that's still growing through and still learning.
Right.
It's not a set science. It's been 6 years. Been 6 years of growing and stretching. So I'm still learning how to be the father that she wants and the father that she doesn't have with her biological father.
Right. Now, one of the things that becomes actually pretty interesting is when children realize that they're growing up and they say, I don't have a dad, but I have a stepfather. Are you classified as a stepfather? How does that? You know what I mean? Because some guys will say, "Don't call me stepfather, call me daddy." But it's kind of like up to the child, because they want to be in that comfort zone. And more importantly is that your biological daughter and her are sisters regardless of anything, and vice versa. Because I have a similar situation with my son, and stepchild, former stepchild. I still call him my son. I'm cool with his father, so me and his father can talk. But the relationship with those children, I think, is important. We have to highlight, because a lot of times guys forget, stepping into this, they say, I have my own son and you have your child, and that's just not it.
No, it's not. No. And I agree. I think that as men, we need to understand that, again, when you're marrying that woman who may have children, it's you become one. And so with that oneness that you develop with her, you develop that oneness with the child. Now, I feel like with some men that, the children call them, hey, stepdad, I think the men in their lives might have actually allowed that to occur. You know what I'm saying? Like they've put their hand out and said, this is how close I'm going to let you get to me,
right.
And so that's why you're going to call me stepdad. Whereas when that child start calling you dad, it's because you've allowed to be fully embraced and allowed to really love this child as your own child with no strings attached to it, regardless of what the case is. So, I've seen some stepfathers say, oh, I'm stepdad. Right. Well, then if you're going to say you're stepdad, that's the role you're going to play. You're not going to be dad. You're just going to be that filler.
Right. So would you say that it's important that fathers maybe just bypass the whole terminology of stepfather, fatherhood, and just be, whatever the child says, for the child's sake? Because when they have that, I feel like when the child is comfortable, then the household is going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in order to make the household comfortable, we essentially have to set that tone, that foundation. So it's like, young man, you know, whatever you want to call me, just call me Mike, call me Vaughn, call me Billy, call me Bob, if you're comfortable with it. Because we have to make sure that, you know, we realize this. And there are a lot of stepfather relationships, you know, in terms of kids growing up without their, you know, biological parents, and that significant stepfather set in place is that guidance for that